Welcome to Ecox Media. Here is that trending video that has captured everyone's attention. As you enjoy the content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
Senate President and distinguished colleagues, may I proceed to lay this report?
Please proceed. Distinguished Senator Neda Emmanuel, you can give us the synopsis of your report so that other senators can comment.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Report of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions in respect of Order 1B of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended, raised by Senator Adaramodu Adeyemi Raphael, Ekiti South, where he drew the attention of the Senate to the incident of Thursday, 20th February 2025, when Senator Natasha Akpabio, while protesting reallocation of a seat in the Senate chamber, and felt that the outburst by Senator Akpabio and the outcry of some sections of the public were uncalled for over the matter, and urged the Senate to be guided by the standing orders in all things. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this matter was referred to this committee for further legislative actions. The committee sat and reviewed. Committee met and resolved that in addressing this matter, it to consider the following instruments: A, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1990 as amended; B, Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended; C, principle of equity, fairness, and justice. And the committee resolved to invite the complainant, distinguished Senator Adeyemi Raphael Adaramodu, and to the respondent, distinguished Senator Natasha Akpabio. Testimonies and submissions of the committee listened to oral and received documentary testimonies from the complainant, the eyewitnesses' accounts of those present, and the eyewitness of those present at the plenary. Testifying before the committee, distinguished Senator Adeyemi Raphael Adaramodu stated as follows: 1, that he is the spokesperson and image maker of the Nigerian Senate. 2, that he was saddened and shocked with the flagrant disregard of Senator Natasha Akpabio of the rules of the Senate proceedings as enshrined in Standing Orders of Senate 2023 as amended. 3, that contrary to Section 6, subsection 1 and 2 of the Standing Orders of the Senate as amended, Senator Natasha Akpabio refused the lawful instructions of the presiding officer to move to her newly assigned seat before raising her order 10 to the Senate, even though the rule states that a senator must speak from his or her assigned seat. That all efforts to get Senator Natasha Akpabio to move to her newly assigned seat fell on deaf ears, as Senator Natasha Akpabio continued shouting on top of her voice and pointing her fingers at the presiding officer, insisting on staying on her oath seat, thereby disrespecting the Senate and the presiding officers against the rules of the Senate. This action lowered the prestige, integrity, and the esteem of the entire Senate, as her actions were deemed disdainful, disgraceful, and unparliamentary. 4, that as the image maker of the Senate, he received calls both internationally and locally on the issue that it became very cumbersome for him to explain the disdainful conduct of Senator Natasha Akpabio of what is happening in the Senate to the various concerned callers. 5, that there was almost a breakdown of law and order in the chamber caused by distinguished Senator Natasha Akpabio, who vehemently rejected her new allocated seat in the chamber. 6, Senator Adaramodu further stated that the standing orders of the Senate is a statute that outlines and harmonizes behavior of the senators' conduct of Senate business in the chamber. That it was a daunting task for him to explain the conduct of Senator Natasha that almost caused a breakdown of law and order in the chamber. 7. That Order 6, subsection 1 and 2 of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended, stated how a senator shall be allocated or reallocated his seat in the chamber. 8. That the essence of sitting arrangement as captured in standing order is to maintain decorum in the chamber, and it is only the president of the Senate that has the power to allocate or to reallocate seats to senators. 9. That the refusal of Senator Natasha Akpabio to take her newly allocated seat tantamount to rebellion against the Senate standing order, which regulates the conduct and decorum of senators in the chamber. 10. That for not sitting on her proper seat, denied her the privilege of speaking on a point of order that she wanted to raise on that day, because standing orders to the Senate 2023 as amended expressly stated that a senator may only speak from the seat allocated to him or her, provided that the president of the Senate may change the allocation from time to time. 11. That the Senate president directed her to go to her new seat, and she would be recognized from there before she could speak. But she vehemently refused in the presence of the entire Senate and the Senate presiding officers, visitors in the gallery. Senator Natasha Akpabio continued to shout that she was not afraid of the Senate president or anybody. 12. That it was due to the bad image that Senator Natasha Akpabio created in the eyes of the public that compelled Senator Adaramodu to move the point of order, calling on the Senate to revisit the incident with the view to instilling discipline in the conduct of Senate affairs. Senator Adaramodu relied on the combined order of Order 1B, 41, and 51 of the Senate Standing Orders, and his prayers were unanimously adopted by more than 2/3 of the Senate, and his motion was referred to the Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petition for further legislative action. 13. That Senator Adaramodu stood by the action he laid on the floor of the Senate in this regard. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, testimony was also received by distinguished Senator Titus Tatenja Zam, the chairman, Rules and Business Committee. In his testimony, Senator Zam stated as follows: 1. That contrary to claims of deliberate suppression, the motion follows standard legislative procedure. 2. That on 7 February 2024, when Senator Natasha Akpabio raised a point of order pursuant to Order 41 and 51, seeking investigation into corruption and inefficiency at Ajaokuta Steel Company and NIAMCO, NIOMCO, she requested immediate presentation of her motion, but due to a scheduled security briefing involving service chiefs, the National Security Advisor, NSA, the Minister of Defense, Police Affairs, and Interior, as well as the Inspector General of Police, the Senate deferred the motion to the next legislative day by the security briefing continuing until 13 February 2024. And the motion was eventually debated and resolved on 27 February of 2024. 3. That the allegation of Senator Natasha Akpabio that her motion was debated because the Deputy President of the Senate presided that day was not true. That motions appearing in the order paper undergo approval by the Senate President, and her motion had been approved by the Senate President for consideration under Order 41 and 51 on 7 February of 2024. That scheduling of motions, that's 4. That scheduling of motions follows procedural rules and is subject to time constraint during plenary sections. 5, that motions and legislative measures appearing on the order paper are not automatically deliberated upon on the same day, that legislative priorities and time constraints influence the deliberation of motions. 6, that Senator Natasha Akpabio motion was deferred on multiple occasions because it was finally debated because such occurrences are common in parliamentary proceedings and do not reflect bias or attempt to suppress any senator's legislative contributions. 7, that since assuming office as senator for Kogi Central, Senator Natasha Akpabio has sponsored 3 bills, one of which is at the committee stage, while the other 2 have passed the first reading, and she also moved a motion on the passing of the Ohinoi of Iberaland, Dr. Abdurraham Ado Ibrahim. 8, that the Rules and Business Committee plays a key role in structuring the legislative agenda and assures the public that due process was followed in handling of Senator Natasha Akpabio's motion. And 9, that the Senate remain committed to transparency, accountability, and fairness in legislative proceedings. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, there were other testimonies taken by eyewitnesses on the floor of the Senate of that day, one of which is Mukhtar Usman Dudawa, DDS AA Senate Chamber. Mukhtar Usman Dudawa testifies as follows. 1, that on Wednesday, 19 February 2025, after adjourning of the Senate session, he was informed by the Chief Whip of the Senate, Senator Mohammed Tahir Mongono, that the leadership have directed him to effect some adjustments of seats on the minority side due to movement of 2 senators, namely Senator Onyebuchi FE and Senator Ned Nwoko Muner to the majority party. 2, that the Chief Whip reminded him to effect the adjustments in line with the ranking as it has been the tradition of the Senate. 3, that the readjustment affected about 10 senators, Senator Natasha Akpabio inclusive, and the reallocation was approved by the Chief Whip, and some chamber staff were instructed to guide the affected senators to their new seats the following sitting day. 4, that all the senators were guided to their new seats, and they complied. But Senator Natasha was shown to her new seat, but she refused and insisted that she would not go anywhere, and removed the name tag on her old seat and sat down and shouting and all efforts by other senators to calm her proved abortive. 5, that Senator Natasha Akpabio was advised by Chief Whip to go to her new seat to enable her speak on the point of order, but she insisted on raising a point of order on her old seat, but was equally advised by the President of the Senate to move to her new seat to be recognized to speak, but she refused and was consequently ruled out of order. That she started shouting in the chamber, which was unparliamentary. All entreaties by some distinguished senators to make her remain calm fell on deaf ears, and she left the chamber on her own when the session was still in progress. The testimonies of Mukhtar Usman Dauda was corroborated by Sandra Davo, Mekawua Abari Kashi, Mercy Rashid Salmanu, and Udeme Igbidejo. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, another testimony was taken from Brigadier General Etido E. Ekpo, who is the Senate Sergeant at Arms. In his written submission, Mr. President, to the committee, Brigadier General Etido E. Ekpo testified as follows. 1, that Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, after being sworn in as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, began to display unbridled and uncourt behavior amongst her distinguished colleagues, thereby creating constant conflict and disharmony. That from his investigation, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan had openly engaged in verbal altercation with Senator Godiya Akwashike and Senator Patrick Ndubeze, in which the President of the Senate and the entire leadership intervened in the interest of peace and harmony. And 3, that by her unethical conduct and verbal attacks, Senator Natasha Uduaghan has succeeded in creating frosty and unfriendly relationship with a number of her colleagues, both in the chamber, committees/meeting rooms, as well as the precincts of the National Assembly. The respondent, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, despite notice to appear, neglected, refused, and opted not to show up at the committee hearing. The observations and findings of the Committee of Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition. After careful examination, the documents available and hearing out the matter, the committee observed as follows. 1, that Senator Natasha Uduaghan has violated Order 6, subsection 1 and 2 of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended by vehemently refusing to relocate to her newly assigned allocated seat in the Senate chamber and insisting to raise the point of order from a seat not allocated to her, thereby causing commotion and disruption in the Senate proceedings, violating Order 62, subsection 2 of the Senate Standing Orders by refusing to leave the chamber when ordered to do so by the presiding officer. 2, that her behavior on the 20th of February 2025 was unethical and unbecoming of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria by refusing to uphold the moral sanctity of the Senate and of the hallowed chamber. 3, that her refusal to appear before the committee to explain herself despite being served with the notice of the hearing published in the Senate order paper and read out to the Senate, indicating time and place of the committee meeting was disdain and disrespectful to the committee and the Senate as a whole. 4, that her allegations that the President of the Senate is frustrating her legislative functions by not allowing her motions and bills to be considered in the chamber is frivolous because the President of the Senate approved her motion on the investigation of alleged corruption and inefficiency at the Jakarta Steel Company Limited, a national iron mining company, for consideration, and it was considered accordingly. And equally, she had sponsored 3 bills that are various stages of legislative processes. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, distinguished Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan came with a petition that was referred to the committee on the 5th of March 2025, accusing the Senate President of sexual harassment. And on this petition that was referred to this committee, the committee observed as follows. 1, that based on Order 40, subsection 4 of the Senate Standing Order of 2023, as amended, which states clearly that no senator may present to the Senate a petition signed by him or herself. The petition submitted by distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan ran contrary to this order as she signed her own petition. 2, that under Order 40, subsection 7 of the Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended, which states that Senate should not receive or deliberate on any matter to which actions are pending in any court of law, the petition of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan being a matter before a law court of competent jurisdiction, the committee therefore cannot deliberate on the petition. 3, the committee noted that distinguished Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan went to court to seek an interim order preventing the Senate and its committee from exercising these constitutional duties as enshrined in Section 88, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. The committee felt duty-bound to exercise its constitutional functions. It is noted that legislative investigation is part of lawmaking. It is adjunct of the legislative process. Accordingly, any investigation carried in the exercise of those powers are constitutional and competent. 4, it is interesting to note that while on one hand, Senator Natasha Akpabio sought in breach to restrain the Senate from doing its constitutional duties under Section 88, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, she also brought a petition to the Senate, arguing that her petition on sexual harassment has merit, which must be accepted and acted upon by the Senate. Accordingly, the petition was referred to the Senate Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petition for action. The distinguished senator cannot, on one hand, seek to prevent the Senate from doing its duties on a petition based on a motion brought against her, and on the other hand, insist that her petition on sexual harassment to the Senate be acted upon through the Ethics Committee. He who comes to equity, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, must come with clean hands. It is important to note that the motion of Senator Adaramodu seeking investigation on the conduct of Senator Natasha Akpabio was referred to the Senate Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions when there was no case pending in court on the issue of seat allocation. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petition, having due deliberation of the matter as revealed by Senator Adeyemi Raphael Adaramodu, Senator Titus Tatenja Zam, Chamber staff, and the Sergeant at Arms, the committee recommends as follows. 1, that the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpabio for 6 months for her total violation of the Senate Standing Rules 2023 as amended for bringing the presiding officer and the entire Senate in general to public opprobrium. 2, that for the Senate to consider lifting the suspension or to reduce the tenure of suspension, Senator Natasha Akpabio shall submit a written apology to the Senate before the reconsideration by the Senate. 3, that the Senate do suspend Senator Natasha Akpabio with effect from 6 March 2025 from all legislative activities forthwith. 4, that her office be locked up for the duration of her suspension and hand over all Senate properties in her possession to the clerk of the National Assembly. 5, that for the duration of her suspension, she cannot come or be seen within the vicinity of the National Assembly, including her staff. 6, that her salaries and allowances, including those of her legislative aides, be suspended and withdraw of all security details for the duration of her suspension. And 7, that for the period of her suspension, she be barred from representing herself to the public, locally and internationally, as a Senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In conclusion, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my most distinguished and respected colleagues, on behalf of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petition, we appreciate the Senate President and our distinguished colleagues for the opportunity granted us to serve Nigerians through the Committee of Ethics, Code of Conduct, and Public Petitions, respectfully submitted for consideration and approval.
Thanks for watching this video. Please, before you leave, remember to like, share, and subscribe. See you in my next video.
Please hit the like and subscribe button.